We all know that human activities is one of the main drivers of climate change. Now, of course, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuel and other materials. Now, in your opinion, what are the immediate long-term consequences, of continued fossil fuel emission on our planet?
Well, I mean, the facts are out there that the more we get to extract and use fossil fuel resources, the more it gets to have mostly negative effect on the environment, right? From how this resource itself is being extracted to how the resource, when utilized, the implication. And this can be seen across board from transportation to cooking energy to how we drive our industries and everything that we get to that, even from providing electrification for our day-to-day needs. The implication of this over time, and from what scientists have also proven to us, is that it's not something that is viable for humans, and it's not viable for the environment, not today and not even in the near future. Some of the things that we can probably also feel around us is the increasing heat waves that we have, right? Every successive year till date have been breaking the record of the hottest year so far, right? And I mean, if you go out there today, you could feel the impact of this directly on your skin, directly on your health, and other issues that, that are also integrated that we can look that we can feel and have experienced around us in the world today. So this is how fossil fuel industry, fossil fuel activities has felt this over a very long period of time.
28 summits, there were talks about, calling off or phasing out of the use of fossil fuel, for a better environment and all that. Now, do you think this is the solution we need, And what would be the implication, the economic implication of transitioning away from fossil fuel to clean energy? How would it impact our economy?
So for the whole conversation going on at COP, yes, we need to phase out fossil fuel and look at cleaner sources of energy. But the reality is that, that cannot happen today or even tomorrow. Fossil fuel as a form of energy has been so integrated into everything that we do, for decades. And so we won't expect that in a matter of months or years that this reliance is going to change. But what I see is that, yes, there are cleaner sources of energy that have been identified, from solar to wind to even a bit of natural gas as well. And what I think we can start looking around is the gradual transition into this renewable source of energy. Yes, it might be easier for some countries than the other. Nigeria, for example, where the bulk of our even our resource, our inflow as a country of over 60% comes from fossil fuel. Imagine that we had to pull the plug for fossil fuel today. How will Nigeria as a country survive, right? It varies across different countries in terms of the level of transition, how quickly they should transit, and what the pace should be like, right? What I think we need more is in terms of, yes, say the long-term planning. Nigeria, for example, has said a 2060 plan to get net zero. And part of how we're sort of setting the ball rolling is to inch the growth of Nigerian economy, the goal of Nigeria energy need on gas, right? And we want to see a lot more investments, we want to see a lot more interest, we want to see a lot more implementation of plans and ideas in this regard. If we don't have all of those implementations in place, if we don't have all of those infrastructure to support these processes in place, then the plan is just as good as a plan, right? As it won't practically respond to the need of the people on ground.
The issues. Now, how do you advise countries, as a clean energy expert that you are, how do we balance, our economic sustainability, and environmental balance, basically? How do we ensure that we have both and not lose out on one in order to achieve the other?
So how do we do this? First is we need to plan, right? For most of the developed countries that typically would say, oh, fossil fuel is harmful to the environment, fossil fuel is not the form of energy that should be driving an economy today. It's somewhat easier for them to do a lot of transitions because they have many of these prerequisite infrastructure in place, right? To aid the transition from fossil fuel form of energy to like a more renewable sources of energy. For a country like Nigeria, we do not have that luxury. But we also need to look at the implication of these different economic activities that we have today that is largely built around the fossil fuel industry, right? To say we can't keep doing what we're doing and I expect different results as we get along. The world is changing, the climate is changing, and changing at a very astronomical rate. So we need to look at what are we doing that is largely impacting what we get from our environment, what we get from the planet and the system around us, right? And that's where I think planning is very essential, right? We don't have bulk of the infrastructure that we need to transit, and this is why we need to plan. And then localize our planning, right? To fit into the context of Nigeria, where are we? What's our energy sources? What are our energy sources? How are we deploying the energy? How are we distributing it? And how do we now sort of adapt this new plan for cleaner energy pathway into the reality and into the context of Nigeria? I'll take a cue from a quote from one European Commission report that says, if we think the cost of moving away from the current energy dependency that we have today is costly, then we also need to bear in mind the cost of inaction. Yes, it could be costly for the immediate term, and that's where we need to plan and face our plan, right? And then also be the same type of effort we put into planning for this, we also need to put that same, if not more, amount of energy and resources into implementing that plan. I mean, we're very good at having a lot of plans, not just Nigeria now. I mean, across Africa and across the world, we have a lot of beautiful plans, beautiful policies, but we need to put this required amount of effort into also actioning those plans, right? And I think that's where we all need to come together to drive this. Again, remember, if we think the cost of moving away from the current energy dependence that we have globally is too costly, then we also need to look at the cost of inaction. Cost of inaction on the environment, cost of inaction on our health, and cost of inaction on our social well-being as a people.
Indeed, indeed. Talking about the people. Now, one of the issues discussed at the COP28 summit was the fact that international bodies plan to, help vulnerable communities, just more like safeguard them from the impact of the climate change. Now, what do you think can be done practically, to help people in vulnerable communities, and just to ensure that they have safe environments to live in? What are the measures to be put in place? Because it was just said orally, it is just speech. But what are the practical strategies, practical steps to be taken to ensure that this is done?
Yeah, so before talking about the practical steps, I want to talk a little bit about how we got here in the first place, right? So when you look at the numbers, across Africa, our contribution to this whole global warming thing is roughly 3%, right? And so when the developed economies are coming together to say we want to help Africa, it's not because it's more like an obligation to help because they have leveraged these dirty energy sources to build their economy, to build infrastructure, to build their system. And so it makes transition a lot more easier for them. At the point we are in now, this was like decades back for many of these developed countries. And now we want to maybe come into the realization of really wanting to develop our system and our economy. And then we've globally identified and aligned that, yes, this source of energy might not be the best way to go because it's not good for the planet. The data is there, the scientists have spoken, the experts have also advised us. Fine. We also aligned that we need to sort of look at a different pathway as we move forward into the journey of our development. But at this time, this is not the first time that these countries are promising or are pledging to support African countries, for example, in terms of helping the transitioning process. So I think what is basically required now is in matching words with actions, right? From what I've seen at COP28 so far, there's been commitment of up to $600 million to support loss and damages, and then to be domiciled temporarily with the World Bank, right? This is to be disbursed to these different countries. But in the true sense, right? I mean, the previous year, last year in Egypt, the COP26, Glasgow, there were also commitments. But when you look at the performance of how much they actually contribute eventually into their commitment, I mean, it's very ridiculously low. I mean, they usually don't even get up to 15% performance of what they've committed, right? Well, for every passing year, we expect that we get a different result in terms of for the world leaders, fairly for the developed economies in the global north, support actually putting the resources and matching their words with action. And then for the local, for African leaders, right? We need to sort of contextualize our plan. So it's not a case of this is what the Germany, this is what China, this is what the US want us to implement. We need to see, does this truly fit within the context of Nigeria? Does this fit within the context of Ghana? Does this fit within the context of South Africa, right? And then we need to be able to plug in those different nuances that speaks to our peculiarity as an entity, and then collectively gather ourselves around it to be able to get these issues resolved. In the long run, yep. Hello, can you hear me?
That the phase out of fossil fuel is what's going to achieve the 1.5 degrees Celsius. That's referring to the line scientists have stated is the limit of safe levels for planetary heating, 1.5 degrees Celsius. Now he said this is not to guarantee this degree of temperature on our planet. Do you agree with that statement, or do you have varying thoughts?
So I think I missed the earlier part of your question. Maybe you can just come again.
Okay. I said during the COP28 summit, the president of the summit stated the fact that there is no science or scenario out there that suggests that the phase out of fossil fuel will bring down the planet's temperature to the 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the required temperature. And okay. So I'm just asking you, do you think that is correct, that remark is valid, or do you have a different opinion on it?
Well, to a very large extent, I probably would not want to really debate the view of, the experts in this case, who have put in so much effort and time into drawing on this conclusion. But at the same time, it goes beyond, maybe where I align to an extent is that it goes beyond just sort of transitioning away from like a fossil fuel source of energy, right? Which we regard as non-renewable energy source, right? There's also the part, so as we sort of transit into the cleaner and more renewable energy sources, right? Something is still very inherent in terms of how humans get to utilize energy, right? Because the more options we have for us to be able to generate and use energy, the more likelihood for us wanting to do more, like wanting to do more in terms of usage. Oh, I have electricity to do ABC. The more possibility for me to have a lot more things to want to do with the available energy. And I think maybe what can I help us be able to drive the desired goal to getting it to 1.5 is that we need to also start looking at what I call energy efficiency, right? That energy is renewable does not mean it is 100% safe for the environment. I mean, look at solar panels, for example, that we're using harnessing energy from the sun, or the one that we're using harnessing energy from the wind, right? These are still materials and components that are produced and also contribute to the carbon footprint as far as the planet is concerned. So it's not like entirely renewable, because the material and the equipment that we're using are energy sources, are also produced, and then you require energy for it to be able to produce these things. So, right, for us to be able to sort of make more progress beyond generating energy from renewable sources, I think the world needs to also start paying much more attention to energy efficiency. Maybe that could help eventually.
Okay, indeed. So, what would you say are the potential social or geopolitical consequences of this switch from fossil fuel to clean energy? And what impact would it have on the common man on the street? Would it further, push Nigerians or Africans into another level of economic quagmire?
So, why I say the geopolitical shift here is that I would say transiting into renewable energy source sort of provides us more opportunities than challenges, right? Because one of the things that it brings about is about decentralization, right? I mean, look at the issue in Europe, right? With Russia and many of the European countries, because they were largely dependent on Russia for energy, for gas. I mean, we all saw the implication of that in the global scene, right? I mean, Russia felt like they have this, not like they felt, Russia has this power or this leverage over many of the other countries across Europe. And then I'm sure times and times again, they would have threatened them to say, hey, if you do this or if you don't do that, we're going to pull the plug or we're going to close the pipe and then you'll be able to get gas. And then these guys will probably have circled back, say, oh, that's true. Let's tread carefully, right? Just so that Russia does not pull the plug on us, just so that we do not get caught from accessing energy that we need to drive our economy, right? And then if you now also look at the implication of this eventually, the implication of the Russia-Ukraine invasion and then the impact across Europe is also far felt in the nook and cranny of Ogbomoso or in the nook and cranny of Kaduna or Sabongida or Shaki or any of those places across board, right? Because we could now see the impact of this on the price of diesel, on the price of petrol, on the price of gas, and the like. And so this is why I think where renewable energy sources could come in eventually to help address issues like this, that it sort of bring about decentralized energy. So you don't have to depend on a country as maybe over 4,000 kilometers, 5,000 kilometers, 6,000 kilometers away for you to be able to power your system, for you to be able to power your economy. And I think this is the opportunity and the advantage, I think, going the way of renewable energy source, which makes it easier for decentralization. This is where I think it comes in really handy to bring about the better list of life for the economy.
Very well.
Yes, in the initial phase could be maybe a lot not so smooth as it sounds, but eventually the mid to long term implication is that it sort of bring about energy independence to different entities and to different countries, which is what we need eventually to really have an equitable world eventually.
Now, a smooth transition is really what we need. Now, how would you advise government, businesses, as well as individuals to collaborate, to come together and collaborate to ensure that we have an effective transition into clean energy?
So first, each stakeholder has a role to play. First, individuals, we need to sort of look at our lifestyle, because the lifestyle that we choose to live will go a very long way in terms of what are the products that we buy, what are the services that we use. And this, to a very large extent, will also influence what businesses produce, right? What businesses provide. Because if the citizens, if the individuals are already demanding, say, oh, we don't use this kind of material because it poses an adverse effect on the environment. We don't use that resources because it's not good for the well-being of the planet, right? You would expect businesses sort of shift away from not producing what people do not need, right? And that also gradually shift the interest and the focus of these businesses to providing what people really need. From the government side, it's really about sensitization, education, and regulations, basically. So providing regulations that makes businesses to thrive, right? Easier on businesses, because again, we don't have bulk of the infrastructure that we need to take this off the ground. And this is where government comes in to provide that enabling environment, to provide that enabling support, and then to provide regulations that drives and makes this happen. I think we need, then eventually the different stakeholders now coming together, identifying this common goal, and then pursuing that goal as it should be. First is that we have a plan, set up a plan that we are working towards as individuals, as businesses and as a government. Nigeria, for example, has the net zero 2060 goal. So it's basically for us sort of working and pursuing towards this goal collectively.